Everybody, what's up? Happy spring 2025. Happy last week of Ramadan 2025. We are moving through this year. Um, I wanted to talk about this movie, Yentl. So this is kind of going to be a spoiler alert. But I guess the ways I want to talk about it, I want to first talk about an overview of the movie, and then I want to talk about um, kind of some of the relationship stuff that was mentioned. I'm gonna try to look it up because they did say some Talmud stuff that I was like, oh, like, and I don't have it in front of me. I'll have to do this on another day, but Frida Weissel posted on her blog um, an article. This was a while back. She used to be Hasidic. Now Yentl isn't about Hasidic Jews necessarily. Um, Took place in Eastern Europe. That was the setting. It's a musical with Barbra Streisand, and it basically is about a woman who wants to learn Talmud and study Jewish religious texts and kind of understand like the mysteries according to the religion and traditions, but she's not able to because the culture at that place and time especially completely would ban it, and she was not allowed. But Frida Weissel, she came from, I think, Kriyas Joel, this Hasidic community in New York, and she left that community but posts about the Hasidic Jewish culture, especially in that area, and kind of traditions. And she does have this one article that she posted that was a transcript with, the private information kind of like not included, but it was a transcript basically of this conversation between a a a, a, a male who is to be married in this high demand religion, and kind of what that conversation is like between him and I don't remember the name of the type of person, but this type of Jewish religious higher up kind of other male that kind of leads these guys into, marriage life, and kind of talks to them about like how to talk to women and things like that. Because in a lot of those types of cultures, Orthodox or ultra Orthodox, they're not really allowed like mainstream American society, at least nowadays. Like people go out and they hang out with pretty much any gender of people that they want for the most part. I have known friends though that maybe couldn't ride in cars with guys, or couldn't go places if it was only like they were female friends and they couldn't ride in cars with guys because of their religion, or they couldn't be alone in a space with a guy, but they were allowed to hang out in mixed groups. And I've known other people who I used to study with religious spiritual type stuff that they didn't really interact with guys. They were very into celibacy and chastity and stuff like that, and I didn't even know that that's what they were doing until later on, when I would go to their meetings and stuff, and they kind of told me once, like kind of nicely, and I kind of got the hint. They were kind of just like, oh yeah, when it comes to guys, we don't want to tempt males, so we don't really shake hands, and we don't really hug, and we don't really sit next to them or talk to them too much, because we don't want to fall into like that kind of temptation, and we don't want them to. And I was kind of like, what? Like, I didn't know, because I would go into the meetings late because I had classes. This is when I went to UC Irvine, and this group of type of Christian used to come over, and I think they went to some school in an area called in Cypress or something. It's like a little area in Orange County. I don't remember the name of the school, but it was like a really religious Christian school, university, college, like a Bible college place, but they were pretty strict. And I don't know if they were a denomination, but they were not too easygoing. Like the women dressed a certain way, the men dressed a certain way. But they weren't Mormon, they weren't Jehovah's Witnesses. They seemed more either, I don't know. I don't want to get too off topic talking about that. But this wasn't that long ago. And I've recently been talking with a Muslim group during Ramadan of 2025. I've recently been like in the group with them, where there's these men and women in the group, but and there's also trans people, non-binary people, and LGBTQ plus people, and you know, a lot of the conversation kind of does lead into like gender equality topics, and you know, it doesn't really focus so much on like discrimination and like prejudice and like finding ways to ban people from like being Muslim. It kind of, or being able to practice it. But there are some people that I've noticed, you know, they talk about like, you know, being in mixed company or being in different groups and things like that. So I just find those things interesting, especially when it's like modern people talking about it. But maybe that's kind of what drew me to this movie. Now I've seen the movie before. I saw it way back, and then I've forgotten about it because it's been out for a really long time. It's a pretty old musical. I don't know what's older, if it's older than Fiddler on the Roof or what, but it's pretty old. And like, if you ever watched, what was it called? Will and Grace. I think if you ever watched that show, Will and Grace, there was the neighbor, kind of flamboyant neighbor named Jack, and he would, I think it was that show where he would do that like "Papa, can you hear me?" kind of like bit, and it was based on the part of the musical from Yentl. Like it's part of the music of that movie. And Barbra Streisand is like amazing, so it is cool. I don't know if I've talked about this before. I feel like I've talked about it, but I haven't like talked about like my thoughts on the movie. So I want to basically talk about. Let me write this down so I don't get too far off track. I want to basically talk about. Let me see. I want to talk about the movie itself. I want to talk about the movie, just kind of like how it went, in order. I've already talked about kind of my background of anything that could be, not anything that could be relevant, but some stuff. But I want to talk about the movie. I want to talk about some of the stuff that kind of came up with like maybe gender dynamics. Not too much though. I mean, that I think that gender topic is going to go way more towards another. I don't know. I'm going to put two separate things in two different podcasts, basically. But I'll talk just briefly on both of them. What, you know, the gender dynamic type of stuff. And I want to talk about, well, some of the references that they had. So I think I'll divide that up. I'll talk about the gender dynamics in one space after I talk about kind of the movie generals, and then in another space I'll talk about the religious references, because I feel like I don't really want to talk. I'm still kind of like debating how I want to talk about those different things. But overall, I'm gonna do the synopsis kind of, just overall synopsis. I'm gonna do that joined, and then I'll have two separate endings depending where you're listening to this at. Just so it'll be more on point. Because I know there's some spaces where people don't want to listen to the religious stuff, and then there's other spaces where people don't want to be listening to the LGBT stuff. So it's like I can separate them out. I've been doing that my whole life. Like I don't really have to you know, I don't really need. I don't have a problem with it so much, but I know other people might. I'm not trying to get flagged. You know, different populations come to different podcasts for different reasons, and I don't want some groups being like, "Oh, this is about religious stuff. I don't want to listen to it," and then other people being like, because maybe they are religious, and then they don't want to hear about the LGBT stuff because some people just hate that kind of topic, and it's sad but true. But you know, for my own listeners and my own engagement of listeners, I want to just stay true to the topics and be able to feel like I'm not completely I feel like I kind of censor myself, you know, if I'm posting the wrong niche in the wrong place. It's like there's certain ways I am not so comfortable talking. I'm used to talking to the religious folks. I'm used to talking to the LGBT folks, but I know sometimes it's hard to overlap those, and I'm not gonna force it. I would love to force it, but I'm not gonna force it. If you guys know where my different podcasts are, you can find the other ones on the other side if that's what you want. And if you don't want that, then I won't make you listen to it. I may or may not post links to both in the description. We'll see. I'll think about it. I don't know if I'm going to do that. I'm talking right now. I don't really know. And I do want to take a note that I do want to post about that Frida Weissel. Dang, I don't know where I'm going to be able to do it. I'll have to do it. I'm going to put it in my notes. I don't know. I have to do it when I have my laptop in front of me because I don't have it. I don't have a, what do you call it? I don't have a hotspot on this phone. I do have my laptop on me, but I don't have a hotspot on this phone, so I can't access the internet on my laptop from here. I am going to go to the library in a while, but I can't record at the library, and if I don't record it in the morning, I'm not going to record it from home likely, but if I can, I don't know, I'll just have to find it on my phone, I guess. It just took me a while to find it last time, and it's on my computer, like with a tab saved, so and I don't want to take too much time looking for it right now. But so let's talk about Yentl. If I haven't, I might have talked about this before, but whatever, I don't care. But I was enjoying watching it. It was pretty fun. I was supposed to be sleeping, but I was watching it. I was like, let me stay up another 2 hours after like 10:30 or so. I was like, let me watch this movie. And I was happy that I did, because I was like, it's kind of just what I wanted to do. So this movie takes place in Eastern Europe in an ultra orthodox environment, and you know, in those societies, men and women's lives are pretty separated out. And I guess what I would say in the gender side of things, and maybe when it comes to like gender, LGBTQ plus type of topics, like that's kind of more what I'd want to go into, is more of like the separated out kind of lifestyles, and kind of like, and also this kind of interesting, because this isn't necessarily like an LGBT movie, But it is interesting, kind of like when there are movies where there's like a man dressing like a woman or a woman dressing like a man. Mrs. Doubtfire right now is free on YouTube. That's one example of something where, you know, it's not, these aren't trans people, they're not non-binary people, they're not necessarily even like LGBTQ plus people or anything like that. They don't even have like a gender expression kind of thing. It's more like in these movies they're doing this for a certain goal. They're trying to reach a specific goal. And so the goal is to wear the clothing of the gender to be able to be that gender to meet the goals. Like in Mrs. Doubtfire, Robin Williams, may his soul rest in peace, poor guy. It's a really funny movie, really great actor. I love that guy, man. But Robin Williams, he plays the role of a housekeeper, nanny, dressing like a woman dressing like this old woman because of a divorce where he's not able to really see his kids so often and has to move out. And he misses his kids and he wants to make sure they're okay. And so he dresses like a woman and gets hired on as a nanny, and he's tricking people. Another movie is, I don't remember what it's called. I talked about it though. I had reviewed it before. It's called like Boys. It's not Boys. Dude, what is that movie called? Oh, I'm so blanking on it. I'm sorry, but it's from like the '80s, I think, and it's like this girl wants to. I don't remember why she pretends to be a guy, but she basically dresses like a boy, and then I don't know. I don't want to ruin the whole story, but I did review it before. And then Yentl is another one where it's like she's dressing like a man to be able to she's dressing like a man to be able to study the religious things and to be part of the religious world that she's completely not able to be a part of just because she's a woman. She's only able to be a part of the women's side of things. She's not able at all to study the way she wants because she's a woman. She's not able to. I don't know if clothing comes up as something that she ever mentioned where she didn't want to wear the clothes. But also, she had a father that was very religious and very studious. I don't think her mother was in the picture. I don't know if I know the background of that part, but she was mostly raised by her father, and the father was ill, but before she was married, and she was a woman living a life as a woman, just taking care of the house. And her father would study all the time, and he would teach other students out of the house, other male students out of the house. And I think he would teach her and help her study kind of privately too, but they kind of had to hide it. And then so there's basically this scene where she's trying to cook in the background and like do the womanly things, the traditionally womanly things, and the father is teaching a guy, a male, in the other room, and the student that he's teaching is not doing very well, and she kind of knows the answers, so she's kind of like chiming in and like answering the questions, and then she gets like frustrated and it's just like, oh, like kind of like says like a quote from some scripture or something that like this guy should have maybe known, and I guess he got maybe jealous or irritated or angry because she was kind of in the kitchen but like chiming in to all the answers, so he maybe looked bad, the student maybe looked bad because he didn't know the answers, but she was kind of answering like maybe 2 times or 3 times. She answered the questions that he should have known answers to when this guy was studying with her father. So she was within earshot of the whole thing, and you know, this young man is like is like, why did you, why does she know Talmud? Like, why does she know this information? Like, and then the father's like, oh, just rest assured, she's just, I teach and she can overhear me, so, she kind of just, hears me teaching, and like, don't worry, you don't have to like tell anybody about this, because I guess it's a gossipy community too. And those of us who grew up in religious communities, or any communities, but a lot of times gossip is not easy to control with people, and that's probably one thing that I've noticed definitely gets out of hand, and people don't reprimand it. Which is why I do kind of like those Chofetz Chaim Lashon Hara, those daily lessons, or whatever you want to call it. It kind of has these lessons or ideas where they basically teach they teach you to be, I don't know how to explain it. They just teach you like how to like what would be okay social topics, and how to like address gossip. And I've talked about it before. But yeah, I just find it interesting because I grew up in a religious community where the gossip for me was one of the more toxic parts that kind of led me to have a whole lot of trust issues. But I don't know if I was ever the main topic of gossip. I remember once being, I guess, because I didn't really like hugging people, but it was like a hugging community. So when you would see people, you'd always like hug them hello and goodbye. And I just didn't like hugging everybody. And it was like during church, we'd have like these greetings, this like designated greeting time. And some people would like escape to the bathroom or go out to their car or whatever because they hated it so much. But you'd basically say happy Sabbath to people and walk around, shake their hand, hug them. So a lot of times, usually with like adult males, I would like when it was like my parents, my friends' fathers, I would usually shake their hands. But pretty much almost everybody else, like older women, like mothers of my friends, female friends, friends that were my own age range, everyone was like hugging, hello, happy Sabbath kind of thing. And it was, sometimes it's like, I don't want to hug these people. I'm not always in the mood to hug people, and I don't want to hug all of them. But then it was like, there was the pressure to kind of do it, because it's like, well, everyone's hugging everybody else. Like, I don't want to be rude, and then sometimes you don't really shake hands. So I would kind of do like this side hug. So I got this kind of, there was once where I came late to somebody's house when everyone was already there. And maybe they were watching a movie or something first, and I was like, I don't want to go, so I'll show up like 2 hours later or whatever. And I guess I had been the topic of conversation, so someone else had to let me in, and then the guy who let me in was like, hey, they were talking about how you hug at church, so let's just do this joke where you hug everybody, but then I guess this one person, I was supposed to shake their hand or whatever. Instead of giving them a hug. Like, the guy who opened the door told me that. So I'm like, how long were they sitting there talking about me about this? Like, but it was kind of one of those things where I'm like, it wasn't a huge deal. And there was something that came up with like a concert. Like, we used to kind of play music and then like be involved in like planning and stuff like that with like these concerts and little shows and stuff. So I would always be on the little planning committees and stuff, and there was something involved with one of those where somebody was like talking some crap about something, and then there were a couple times where one of my friends said that one of the pastors that or somebody that was kind of like in charge of things, I don't know if he was a pastor or like a pastor in training, but there were 2 times where he had been talking about me when I wasn't there, and I just, like, my friend told me when I wasn't there, she told me, and then I kind of just emailed him both times, and I was like, oh, I heard that I heard that this was a problem for you. Sorry about that. I remember the second one. I don't remember the first one. But I know there were 2 times where I remember apologizing. Even though I don't think it wasn't anything I really did wrong on purpose, but it was like, the second one was that there was when I was leaving the apartment early one night, after a game night or something like that. I was with a couple other people, and there was this one person I grew up with that was kind of problematic, as far as like having a big mouth in a way that she would just say whatever. She didn't care how people felt. And she hated this guy, and she basically there was a couple outside. We were leaving out of the apartment complex, but we had to pass by the front of the apartment complex where there were these glass doors, and on the other side of the glass doors, on the stairs that led to the sidewalk, to the street, you could see, there was like this couple, and there's this lady who looked kind of like very upset, and she was in tears and crying, and I was kind of just looking at it. There was a guy, it looked like a couple, maybe in the middle of a breakup, and I couldn't tell if she was drunk or if she was just really in tears or on something, but I was kind of like, I wonder if she's okay. Maybe we asked, I don't remember, but I was thinking, I wonder if she's okay. And it wasn't like a racial thing or anything, and it wasn't like there's like a man and a woman and the man's gonna be bad. He wasn't hitting her, he wasn't being aggressive. It just looked like, I was like, either she's drunk and he's trying to console her, because she seemed a little bit sloppy, but she was definitely in tears, and he didn't seem drunk, and he seemed sober, and he seemed of sound mind. It was like, either that's what's happening, or he's trying to like coerce her to kind of come back to his place, because she was kind of saying no, 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 like no, and like crying and stuff, and he was just kind of like, he wasn't pulling her or anything. He was kind of like, kind of hand on the shoulder, kind of like a little bit, or like hand on the elbow, kind of like just like touching her arms, kind of lightly, sort of like just kind of like nudging her towards a direction a little bit. So I feel like she wasn't gonna be in trouble, like, but I was like, I don't really know, because like she was there a while, because we were outside talking, because something had happened in that apartment where we were like irritated about it. So a lot of us, the ones who left early, we were kind of like venting about something while this was going on, and we had observed it. And I remember I called, I called the guy whose apartment it was, this problematic pastor type guy, and I was like, can you call the cops? Something's going on out here. But the girl with the loud mouth, she's the one who's like, call the cops. And I was just like, I don't know. I don't really think anything's really going wrong. Because it looked like basically he was either trying to be like, maybe like, don't drive, come back to my place, or like maybe they were breaking up and he was just like trying to apologize, but trying to get her to come inside. But I don't think he was being, I don't fully think he was being like a bad guy. Like, he wasn't doing anything like aggressive or anything, but she was definitely like on something and not doing well. So maybe he was trying to help her. But anyways, I guess the cops came once we left, because he called the cops, and then the neighbor said to never talk to him again. Told this pastor guy, never talk to me again, don't even talk to me ever, or whatever. And then he was like, oh, I wish that she never told me to call the cops. And then my friend was there when this pastor guy said that, and she told me like, oh, I wish, he said he mentioned you when he was saying that kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But I don't really care now, but I mean, like, if he had a problem, he should have told me, or if he didn't want to call, he shouldn't have called. I mean, like, I don't know. Looking back, and with how things are with police these days and everything, I can kind of see why the neighbor would have been so pissed off. And I don't think calling the cops was maybe the right choice. And I kind of hesitated about that too, because I was like, I don't really think that's the right answer. Like, because what if he had a record, or what if he had some kind of trouble? What if he was in trouble, or what if he did, what if he had some kind of record or background or like documentation status to where like he's trying to go undetected, but he's not doing anything like, wrong currently in that specific situation, but then like he gets the cops called, plus he was a minority, they were both minorities, I'm a minority too, these other people, none of them were minorities, and so it was kind of like, I don't know, this was in the past, this was over like a decade ago, probably like 15 years ago, and then there was something that happened before that I don't remember what it was, but I've definitely had experiences, just a few, that I'm like, oh, somebody was like talking about me when I wasn't there, and it was like groups of church people in the same space where I was not there, and I'm just like, why are they even talking about me? But yeah, those were the things that I noticed in my life. But let me talk about this movie, because I could talk about church life, or like I could talk about it for the rest of my life. As we know, once I start talking about it, I just can't shut up. But basically, the movie starts with her at the market. Yentl's at the market. She's trying to buy, like, she's deciding between one fish or another because she's gonna cook it later on, and she's trying to get this fish made, like cooked or dinner made or whatever. She's at the market, there's a lot of women there, and they're all kind of gossiping and talking and saying how I guess she should get married or something. The typical communities being too involved in your life kind of thing. Older people being too involved in younger people's lives sometimes. But they're kind of like, yeah, like, trying to push her a little bit, talking to her a little bit, and trying to like get some gossip, the latest, what's the scoop kind of thing. And she kind of doesn't I guess she doesn't really want to talk to them, because this guy is coming by with these books. He has like a horse and a cart pulling these books, and he's like, he's just kind of shouting what he's selling, and just like driving the cart around with the horse, and like, okay, religious books for men, like stories and picture books for women and kids and stuff like that. And then he kind of starts actually trying to get the stuff to the people. He's just driving around, but Yentl is kind of like at the market still, at the part where there's like the food, and he's kind of driving around this road, and he's almost like out of the place when people are still trying to get her attention, and she just kind of orders some, she's like, I just want this fish or whatever, just kind of like wrap it up real quick and like get it paid for. And then she's kind of trying to chase after this guy to get the books, and some ladies are like trying to like get some update from her about something, and she's like, no, I can't talk right now, like I don't have the time to talk right now. And she's more interested in trying to get to the books, because she's like, well, she wants a new kind of book. She overhears these guys, these, I don't know what you call them in this movie, but I think typically today they'd be called yeshivish guys, yeshiva bucker. They're these kind of guys that are in a yeshiva, and they study Talmud and Torah and all kind of religious texts, and that's kind of their lifestyle. It's like a school, kind of religious school lifestyle that's like very studious, and like those types of materials. Some places you can live at them, it's like dormitory style. Other places you'd have to live off campus or with families. And for some people, for some cultures or some groups that do this yeshiva culture, they really, it's almost like with college, how you have to like get in and like, you know, be interviewed and get in and like be a good fit for the culture of the place. And it's kind of based on your own culture too. I think they have them for women too. I don't know if Beis Yaakov is what is called for women, but they have them for women too. But I don't know if they're like the same as the ones for men. Like the ones for men are considered like you even hear it in Fiddler on the Roof, where is his name Tavier or Tevier? He's talking about like if I was a rich man, I would study the holy books all day and that kind of stuff. Like it's kind of like it's almost like a status thing too. Sometimes it's like your parents could afford to send you to a school like that. Like they're expensive schools. The only ones I really know about are in New York, but I know they have them all over the world. But basically, she overhears some studious guys kind of talking about. One of them's talking about something kind of like mysterious in this book that he read, and he was like, "This is very amazing," and like, you know, he's kind of telling this other guy about it, and then he kind of puts the book back in this box, and then she kind of was overhearing that and saw the book. She picks up the book and wants to buy it, and the you know, the bookseller guy with the cart is like, "No, you can't take this. This is for you're a woman. Like, here's a nice book for you." And they're kind of debating back and forth. And she's just like, "No, like I want this." And then she kind of lies, like, "Oh, it's for my father." And he's like, "Why didn't you say so?" You know. And then he lets her get the book, and you know, I think she's trying to read that book when she's cooking the fish, and then that's when that student is there, and she has this interaction with the student, and where the student is getting like the wrong answers or doesn't know the answers while studying with her father, and she knows the answers and she's kind of like saying them from the other room. He gets upset. Eventually the lesson ends. He seems irritated or jealous, and that's probably why he went and spread a rumor that was true but was gossiping about the fact that she's knowing and studying Talmud. And that news kind of gets out, and her father's kind of ill, and he basically ends up, you know, like basically, there's a lot to explain. I'm not going to explain every single Jewish cultural thing, because it would take forever. But basically, the women and men are separated in the temples, like in the you know, in the synagogues. In this one, the women are in the balcony, but when they don't have places with balconies, they have, there's always like something called like a mechitza, so it's like this divider where you can kind of see through it. I don't know if they ever have a mechitza where you can't see through it at all, but there's either like a curtain down the middle or like some kind of mesh thing or like a gate that you can see through. Even if you've seen that movie, The Chosen, based on the book by Chaim Potok, at the wedding scene, they have like this kind of like a gate or like a fence where there's kind of like you can see through it. It's got like these kind of crossed pieces of wood. You can see through it if you're looking through it, but it's like it's divided. It's almost like having like a fence that you can see through. It's like you can see through it, but it's like you can't fully see through it enough that you could like just be staring through it unless you're like right up with your eyes to it. Like it makes some kind of a division. And it's kind of like that with the balcony. Like the women are there. She's got her face pressed up against this this balcony divider thing where she can kind of like see more closely all the details. A lot of the other women up there are just, some of them are like whispering to one another, or they're just, you know, doing their own thing. They're kind of following along with the prayer books or doing their own thing. But the men are down on the ground level and they're studying and praying and chanting and like really like into the service. There's a scene where the father kind of like, almost like his eyes just kind of like close or almost close, and he's kind of like, you know, um, drifting over because he's like, kind of like if you fall asleep in class, kind of like that. But I think he's like standing and kind of like starts to kind of lean, and she's paying attention to him, and she's like, Papa, like from the balcony, and that you could tell that her screaming her father's name, because she's kind of worried too, but her doing that, like, people don't even care that she's worried about her ill father. They care that she's, I don't know what, I'm gonna guess it's like a woman speaking up during the temple, or a woman's voice being heard, like she's supposed to be like not heard, or that she's disrupting the service. But basically, for whatever reason, her talking at all and being heard and like saying "Papa" like really loud to kind of get, she kind of was like saying it like maybe to get his attention, but also like she's worried because like he's ill, he's getting tired all the time. So she tries to be sensitive about it around the house, and when she sees him being tired, she's kind of like, oh, I'm tired, I'm kind of sleepy now. You know, I've been kind of tired. Like, can we take a break or whatever? Like, I'm sleepy, you know. She says that she's tired, so that he can rest when they're trying to study. And then, but he does actively study with her, and she's very knowledgeable. At one point when he passes, she basically, during the mourning period, the traditional mourning period of time, she has all these women coming over. I don't know if they're aunts or cousins or relatives or who, but one of them is kind of thinking to take her on, and is like, you can come over, you can stay with us, it's not a problem. And she's kind of like, we'll keep you so busy, like, there won't be any rumors about you studying. You won't even have any time to, like, think about it. Like, you'll be so busy with, like, the cooking and the house chores. And, like, they're trying to think up a lifestyle for her of what they want her to do. Kind of pressuring that life and being like, this is what your life is going to be, because you're a woman. This is what your life is going to be now. And so they kind of pressure her. And they're kind of like insensitive too, and they're just kind of like, they're more focused on the tradition of it all than on how she might feel or her grief. They're like, okay, it's been 10 days, like, you gotta move on. And it's like, dude, she lost her father. I mean, she's not even married. She's probably maybe in her, I'd say 18, 19, maybe in her early 20s. I don't know what her age range is, but she's not old. She's young enough. And she's not that old. And so, but she also doesn't know a lot about, like, the housekeeping and the women's things, because the father didn't teach her, and the father kind of helped her study, and she learned to study, so she knows how to study, and she kind of does, like, basics. Like, she knows the basics, but I guess she's always burning the food and stuff like that when he was alive. And, like, he didn't really seem to complain about it. He was just kind of like, let's move on and, like, just study, And so that wasn't an issue when it was just the father and her. But it's like, well, once he kind of was getting closer to the end of his life, he kind of did comment like, I should have raised you more like a woman. Kind of like, it's going to be hard for her to get married because, she doesn't know how to do all the stuff that the married women in the culture do. She's not practicing it. She does it, but she's not good at it. She's not very skilled. And she's kind of like, I don't want to just darn my husband's socks or whatever. And, once the father passes, that's when she, I guess they had a brother too. She had a brother that I can't tell if the brother was older or younger, but I think she had a brother or a sibling. I want to say the sibling was a brother. They make mention to it a little bit, and I think that might have been why she had clothes. Because I don't know, maybe she was wearing her father's clothes, or maybe it was her late brother's clothes. I don't know, but she had access to, like, men's clothes. And, the ladies who came over after the mourning period, they were like trying to clean out the house and get rid of everything, and they're like, I'll come back for you later on this evening, like, be ready. And they just seemed really insensitive. I was like, man, they're like, that's kind of what I caught on to. I was like, man, they're really insensitive with her. Like, they're really kind of like just trying to crack down. Like, they weren't being like that mean, but they were definitely not asking her like, what are your needs? Like, what do you need from us? Like, we know you're mourning. Like, they were more focused on like getting her into the traditions the way that they thought she needed to be living her life, and more concerned with getting their house chores and stuff taken care of, and letting her do a lot of work and taking off some of the burden that they might have. That seemed to be their primary concern. Making her more ready to be like a wife than not. And so that was kind of more of their concern. More of her concern. But yeah, like I saw it as pretty interesting. She puts on the clothes, she cuts her hair, she puts on these guys' clothes, so she's wearing the talit, the one that's like underneath with the tzitzis and like the fringes and all these kind of like the attire. She's got the shoes, the pants, the shirt, the vest, the yarmulke, she's got the whole shebang. She's got religious texts, and she kind of can carry those around with her. And she's dressed like a guy. She leaves, kind of like flees, tries to get to the next town. She gets her money stolen because she tries to ask for a ride when she sees some people passing by. And she gives somebody money, and then the people in the back don't let her in, and then the ride just kind of goes on without her. She ends up crossing this river or body of water on this like raft with these people. It's like a ferry. I guess you'd consider it like a ferry. Like, people use the service. It was like a service that was there. People were waiting on either side to get shuttled to one side or the other. So she takes this raft kind of ferry type thing. I don't know what you call it. Across the water, and gets to this area where she, sees all these like yeshiva guys, and she runs it. She comes into this, I don't know what it is, if it's a yeshiva, if it's a tavern or like a cafe or a lunch place, or it seems like there's a lot of guys somewhere eating that tend to be students from maybe like various places, a lot of guys that would be technically her kind of age range. And they're there eating, and she's kind of there with them, and looks young. She looks like a boy, kind of like a little boy, but not, I don't know. She looks like Barbara Streisand to me, but, everyone thinks she's a guy. Like, nobody catches on at all. Like, the whole movie, no one really catches on until the end where she reveals it. But, I think someone maybe might have noticed once. They kind of questioned it, but all the other times they didn't really notice. So, she's there. She's with these guys. One guy is like, they're kind of rough and tumble kind of guys. Like, there's a guy jumping off of a balcony, and like guys kind of pushing each other around and stuff. And so she's kind of in an all guy environment as this woman who's dressed like a little man, like a little boy, basically. Not a little boy, but a younger guy of age to be able to be out in that environment, like living a solo lifestyle of age. But she's looking like a guy, being treated like a guy. So one guy tries to like take advantage of a new younger person and is like trying to bully her and be like, here's the money, like give me money every time. I don't remember what it was. Like, I guess at first she kind of helped somebody with chess, and then this other guy starts bullying her. making her answer some questions, and then she answers. He kind of forces her to sit down and pay money, and then he does it a second time, and then this other guy kind of catches on and is like, leave him alone. Leave him alone, like he's not doing anything wrong. And so yeah, he says leave him alone. And he doesn't really leave him alone, I guess. But he says leave him alone. And he requests for people to leave him alone. And he basically takes him on, and or takes her on, and but thinks he's a boy, and befriends him right away. And I guess he had lost his younger brother. This guy had lost his younger brother, and so he's kind of very fond of Yentl. But this guy's name is Avigdor, but then Yentl goes by Anshel, which is, I guess, her belated brother. So Yentl goes by Anshel, but Anshel is still a woman. And then Avigdor is trying to like look after her and stuff. And so there's always just scenes going back and forth, she's, Yentl or Anshel at this point. Anshel's trying to get, she wants to study at a yeshiva. She wants to kind of study, and Avigdor's like, you should study at mine. And she's like, well, do I have to live there? Can I live there, or we'll have to live somewhere else? And he's like, no, you have to live somewhere else, but you could probably live where I live. And I guess there was one spare room, but it was taken for that first night, and so she had to share a room with Avigdor. So Anshel, who is Yentl, Anshel and Avigdor are sharing a room for this first night, and Yentl's, I don't know what name to use anymore. Anshel is nervous, and so Anshel, it's kind of like, because she knows that this is a guy, she's a woman, and I think she kind of likes him from the beginning almost. But then she finds out that first night that he's kind of married, or engaged to be married, I guess. And, he's like, why did you bring, like, because they start talking about this fiance of his. And he's like, why did you bring it up? Now I'm never going to sleep because, and then they start having this talk, kind of like, do you ever have, like, not really like, do you ever have, like, sexual desires? More like, do you have evil thoughts? Like, they were kind of like, it's like in a negative connotation, like that sexuality isn't, like, something to be thought about. And, Anshel's kind of like, no, yes, and, like, I don't know, like, didn't really know how to respond to that, and kind of quotes some kind of scripture that says that, like, if two bachelors are in a bed together, they need to face back to back. I don't know if it's true or not, but Anshel quotes that, and it was very interesting. And starts, they were back to back in the bed, and they're just back to back, basically, sleeping on the bed together. And they wake up, they go, to the yeshiva, and Avigdor is like, you can get an exam from the head of the yeshiva and see if you can get in. And Yentl does well enough in the interview that he's accepted, or she is accepted. And she gets, I might just say he, I don't know. Because this isn't it's not a trans person. This, she's a woman. No, she's a woman, identifies as a woman, but is pretending to be a guy so that she can study. So that's what makes it a little complicated. But yeah, so I don't want to misgender saying either they or he, because this person doesn't, Yentl doesn't identify as a man, and is not trying to be a man. Yentl is trying to study and is pretending to be a man. Those are two, that's a complete separate thing. And so, yeah, Angel's just like, the head rabbi is kind of walking past all these groups that are already in study, and like saying like Angel's not good. Angel's too good for these people, too good for these people, too good for these people. And I guess Angel has a really good, is really smart and knowledgeable, and Avigdor is the only one in that yeshiva that is a high up student, and so they end up becoming study partners. They didn't use the word chavrusa, but I'm assuming that it would have been considered that, kind of a relationship or bond where you're kind of studying that kind of stuff. And then they kind of lived at the same house, but I think they didn't have the same room other than that one night. But they could kind of like visit each other, and they were studying a lot. And on Tuesdays they'd go over to the bride-to-be's house, and then I can't tell the whole time if Anshel Yentl is jealous or not. That's the part that I can't really tell. I kind of got the vibe, ooh, maybe she's a little jealous, because she's kind of like, well, why don't you care? You don't care about what she thinks, or like, she's very beautiful, and like, like, there's a song that's kind of like, she's, Angel's kind of singing about, Angel Yentl is kind of singing about, no wonder he loves her or whatever, because of like all the stuff that, she's wealthy, she does every little thing for him, and tends to his every need, isn't like, he wouldn't have to come home to like somebody chatty, and she kind of just goes with whatever he says, kind of thing, and serves him all these meals, and the food is very well cooked. It's delicious food, apparently. She's a very good cook, maybe a little clumsy, and she's kind of embarrassed about it because her dad makes a kind of joke like, oh, again, that you're like spilling food on the tablecloth or whatever. But she's like serving everything to this fiance of hers, and they're in love. They're both in love with each other, but it comes out that, Avigdor had said that his brother had passed from pneumonia. That's what he told Anshel. He told this family that his brother had died from consumption, but then coming closer to the wedding date, they find out that the brother had died from, ending his own life, unfortunately. And they're like, well, it would be a sin to match these two with a melancholic type of background in the family, because they're trying to preserve like these gene lines, and preserve the family lineage, because the goal is to be able to have, traditionally to be able to have kids, multiple kids, males and other kids, that you can pass on your traditions to. And you can't pass on traditions if the kids aren't going to be healthy. And if you already know that this is in another person's family history, I guess that's means to kind of break off an engagement. And so they're both distraught. And then Avigdor comes up with this idea. Like, I don't know. Anshul and Avigdor start talking about it. Avigdor's super upset and is like, has to come clean about his brother, and having ended his life, which is why his brother had passed. And then they're kind of in a debate, like, is it biblical, or like, is it written by any of the sages or anybody that like that you could find a way where that would be okay. And Avigdor comes up with this idea that the male that Anshul Yentl should marry his ex-fiancée because he wants to be close, and because Anshul Yentl is a woman and is just like, well, I was just here to, in her mind, she's like, I'm just here to study. I'm not trying to like marry some woman, like, so she becomes engaged. She kind of debates it, but she loves Avigdor so much, and Avigdor is going to leave the town because he can't bear the pain of all of this and losing her, and kind of questioning the friendship between Anshul Yentl and himself. So he starts questioning their relationship, and because he's questioning that relationship, he's like, well, if you don't do this, we're not really close friends, I guess, and so I don't have a reason to stay. And so he's about to leave, and then Yentl doesn't want him to leave, or Anshul's like, I don't want you to leave, like, because she's in love with Avigdor too, and so I don't even understand. This is like it's such a messy story. Yentl Anshul is in love with Avigdor. Avigdor is very fond of Yentl Anshul, but is in love with this other woman. So once the engagement is broken, he's brokenhearted and just like, well, if there's no chance of me ever being with her, I'm just gonna move. So he ends up not moving because Anshul Yentl decides to say, hey, I'm gonna actually, I'll do it. I'll get engaged to her. And she starts going over to the house privately with just like dates and stuff, where she's like serving him her meals, and they kind of click. And this person, she is very kind of into Anshul Yentl, kind of into her in a way, just comfortable, but she definitely was in love with Avigdor. And she tells this whole she tells this whole story of, I guess, I don't know. She just tells a whole story about it. What was I saying? I don't know what I was just saying right now. Sorry. Oh, so yeah, there's a whole song and all this kind of stuff. Like, the whole thing, no wonder he likes her kind of thing, is now her kind of understanding, like, why these guys like these women that are acting this way. It's like, no wonder they like these women, because of how they get treated, because culturally it's nice, if someone's waiting on you hand and foot and kind of never argues, and is very kind of like almost like submissive or something. She's kind of understanding more and more like how come it is that the culture kind of seems to work that way, you know. And so they get engaged, they get married, they have like a whole wedding ceremony, and then they don't really say this in the movie, but I guess it's called a yichud room. So kind of that's kind of like where I guess traditionally both people would lose their virginity and be, you know, together and consummate the marriage and become officially husband and wife. And they just officially become husband and wife, and they then after they become husband and wife, they're basically able to you know, just live their life. So in this like yichud room scene where they're supposed to be consummating the marriage, you know, her parents kind of put Anshul and this lady in the room like after the wedding service, but I guess there's still the reception and all that going on, but they kind of go off to their room. Now I'm not saying the movie what that short series movie, what was it called? Unorthodox. It's called Unorthodox. I first saw it on Netflix. They kind of have a scene where it's like you kind of get a taste for that kind of culture too. How it's like, you know, the bride and the groom kind of have their private meal, and then there's kind of like this whole portion leading up to, you know, they're finally able to be alone. Because if you even see like the dating culture of how they date, usually it's going to be like in a hotel lobby, at a coffee shop, or at a house, but never unchaperoned, never fully alone. So on their wedding day, that's the first time they're going to be fully alone, at least according to the traditions. So you see them being fully alone in this yichud room, and, you know, Anshul Yentl is kind of like, you know, I mean, she's a woman, so she kind of knows, you know, that maybe this other lady might have concerns. And she's kind of like expecting, she's like, well, you know, my parents told me not to refuse you, you know. And it's kind of interesting, that dynamic is interesting, because I'm listening to what she's saying and what Anshul Yentl is kind of explaining to her. This lady, this new bride, is explaining that I guess the parents say to Anshul Yentl, like, we've kept her sheltered, she knows like nothing, so just, you know, go and have sex, basically. Give us a son, you know, we want a son in 9 months, kind of like pressure's on, you know, it's time to start having babies. They want these people breeding, they want, you know, the genes of Anshul Yentl with their daughter. They're ready for, you know, grandkids already, like 9 months. They're just like, let's do this, let's have some boys and start the procreation process here. But it's kind of interesting because you see that they both, I guess both people, both in the couple are how do I say? Both of them, you know, they're young, they're able to have kids. They're able, like, I'm assuming they're adults, young adults. And then they're just supposed to start like the wedding night that way. They're supposed to consummate the marriage, and so basically they they basically like Yentl is kind of like telling this new bride of hers, hey, don't worry, like, you know, did you know that the Talmud says, or did you know that it's written, that you can refuse me, or like, I know that you still love Avigdor, and it's written that, you can't, you're not supposed to be, having sexual relations with another person when you're still in love with someone else, and so we kind of can't, or else it would be a sin. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. A lot of the stuff that they say, I don't really know if it's true. If it's actually written that way, or if Ansel Yentl's just like saying it to be able to postpone things as long as possible. Because Ansel Yentl can't be found out, and it's like, how are you going to be not found out when you're a woman trying to have sex with another woman? I mean, she may not know anything, but I'm pretty sure she's going to know that part. She's going to know, once you start taking off your clothes, that you're not a man. So Ansel Yentl kind of tells this bride, the new bride, we can wait, but let's make it seem, let's have some wine and make it seem like we're kind of like having fun, and like we can be friends first, and like, and just kind of have this party, we're gonna like party it up. And let's kind of have this amazing party with the two of us, and they're like jumping all over the beds and throwing pillows all over the place, and like laughing and giggling and like, throwing stuff around. And so the parents, I guess, who are sleeping across the hall from this newlywed couple, they're like, oh, like what? Like, whoa. Like, they overhear this when they go upstairs, and they're like, what is going on? Like, what are they doing? Because they see, like, you can't see through the windows, but it's like they're kind of frosted windows, and they see kind of like stuff hitting the doors, and they're kind of trying to listen through the door, and they kind of hear it though from the hallway. They're like, whoa, like they're like screaming and laughing and giggling and like, just like having a fun old time in there, and like, it sounds like they're having a blast, but it was kind of awkward. I'm like, dude, and they're gonna sleep right across the hall. Like, I know it's like, okay, yeah, there is the nature. People do sexual stuff. It's like, to me, it just feels so involved. It's like, I would not want my parents sleeping across the hall from me if I was a newlywed. And I definitely wouldn't want them sleeping across the hall from me, either as a newlywed or as just at all. Like, with dating or anything like that. It's like, it just seems like weird. It's like a weird dynamic, and especially because they seem so nosy and the community so involved. It's like, this just is too much. For me, that would all be way too much. I'm like, I definitely need way more space. But they seemed okay with it. But yeah, like, it was just kind of funny. It was kind of weird and funny. But yeah, I felt like they were kind of just, trying to have their fun, and that happens for a while. Avigdor comes over for one of their, I guess after that, Avigdor's like, what was it like? What was she like? Like, what was it like? Like, you've been with her now. Like, what is she like in bed, kind of thing? Like, and Ansel Yentl's kind of like, it has nothing to report because they're not sleeping together. And then Ansel Yentl kind of makes something up, and that is one thing too, where it's like they probably shouldn't share that kind of stuff. Like, if they really were, yeah, it's just kind of weird, because it's like, who would want that in real life? Who would want their wife to be in love with their best friend that they're in love with? Like, realistically, that doesn't sound like a good option. But it's also like, it kind of shows with, I'm not saying that this is like a normal thing in certain religious cultures, but it just shows that in certain religious cultures, or certain cultures in general that are high demand, strict cultures, it's like, people break the rules and, to kind of get their own needs met, and it's like Avigdor was kind of breaking the rule. He kind of tried to spin some kind of religious text to kind of make it sound like, he wanted to kind of make it sound like he was in like what he had pitched to Yentl was a biblical or religiously sound idea that they can do, or like Talmudic or some kind of rabbinical explanation of like why this was considered okay when it wasn't really okay, but you know, but he wanted to just be able to at least be near his best friend and the love of his life, and needed his friend to marry this lady for that to be an option, because otherwise he wouldn't be able to ever come to the house or talk to her, because even if he did marry someone else, it's like, he might have to move, or she might have to move if she marries some guy who lives somewhere else, and then he would never see her again. He couldn't like just start showing up and like being like, oh, I knew her from the past, like, let's be friends, like, because he's a man and she's a woman, so he wouldn't have been able to just do that. The only way is to kind of keep it close to home, which, Anshel Yentl was, like, basically the closest person to him that also knew her, so they could kind of make this plan together, to try to trick the situation into Avigdor's favor. But Avigdor really wasn't thinking about Anshel Yentl, wasn't really thinking about this woman. He was thinking about himself, He wasn't thinking about what is best for her. Maybe a little bit, because they did both love each other. Like, she did actually love Avigdor. But, yeah, they kind of talked about it and were able to kind of do what they needed to do to make this happen. So that's how come there's a movie. And or musical, movie, so basically they're able to kind of make this happen. Anshel Yentl, I guess back up one step, before they had their fake consummation wedding night. Sorry, there's weird stuff falling off the tree onto the top of the car, so if you hear weird noises, that's what they are. Yeah, Avigdor was kind of trying to tell Anshel Yentl, this text that I guess comes from, I wrote it down. It comes from Nachmanides. I don't know how to say that word. Nachmanides, called the Holy Letter. And there's something that Anshel kind of quotes to the bride, or quotes, I don't know when. Somebody mentioned something about, like, it was some sexuality related topic. I can't remember what the topic was, but I wrote it down. They said it's called Yevamot 63 AB. So those are the places to be able to find the references, and I'll talk about them in more detail depending where you're listening to this at. But I'll get the rest of the information out about the end of the movie, and then I'll say that, if you want to email me If you want the other, I'm going to have to make this 2 parts. If you want the other part that I'm not talking about on this specific podcast where you're listening to this, if you want the other endings, if you want the other part 2s, I guess, email me, and I'll leave my emails for these podcasts at the beginning of the part 2 of this. I'll leave the email. You can email me there, and I'll send you the link to the part 2 if you want either the gender one, like the LGBT and gender identity one, or if you want the one that has like the religious stuff with the text in it. Now, I personally don't think there's anything wrong with combining them both, but I know how people are, and I am just sick of it. So I'm just going to post them separately, just because it's easier for me. Because I feel like I can't fully say what I want to say on either end. For reasons. Just, I think it's possible to overlap populations, but some people just aren't into it. And I am, like I said, I'm not really at a place where I feel like I want to force it, even though I do kind of want to force it. I don't kind of want to force it too. I kind of have both. I kind of see it both ways. But I can just email you guys if you want. You can always email me. And, well, not always email me, but you can email me. I check the emails eventually. I'm starting to get some emails, so I do kind of check them a little more regularly nowadays. At least maybe once a week, once every other week. But I don't really check these emails all the time. So, excuse me. I've had messages from people where I'm just not even checking the messages. I don't even care. I'm like, whatever. Like, I've got my personal email, and I don't really want to check all the other stuff all the time. But basically, Ansel Yentl, gets married with this lady, and Avigdor gives some advice based on this, the holy letter, and then, yeah, there's advice. So there are some religious texts in this culture that do touch on sexuality, but it seems to be more so between married couples, and this information isn't really told to people who aren't married. I don't think. And so it's just kind of interesting. But yeah. Eventually the bride starts wondering why Ansel Yentl doesn't really want to sleep together, because I guess it's been a while after a certain point. And, this bride starts, like, studying Talmud, and, Ansel Yentl's very, like, supportive, and, like, yeah, you need to know what's written, like, you're a woman, you have rights, and, because she's a woman, too, so she's kind of like, okay, like, I can kind of, like, tell you what's up, because you clearly don't know, because people are sheltering you, and you're following the traditions, and you're not really knowledgeable, and this information, a lot of it in these high-demand cultures can be used to control people, and so that's one thing with that Muslim group that I like that they touch on, is that they talk about the aspect of how certain either Quran texts or what's called hadith, how certain information and traditions in the religion can be used to control. And I kind of like hearing them say that, like, I don't like that it happens, but I like hearing people mention it, because I'm like, that is so true. Because some things, you wonder, like, is it really something that was like a revelation from God or some kind of higher being? Or is it just people making it up because they want to, like, control these other people? And they're like, well, we can control women. So it seems to often go that direction with a lot of high demand religions, where it's like, and in general, in a lot of cultures, there's always this, let's control the women. The men have the say, the women don't have equal rights or equal say or equal anything. It's like they need to be home raising the kids and tending to the house and cooking our food and mending our clothes, and they don't need to be working or making money or making an equal wage. Or I'm not gonna get into it here, but we know unfortunately we know what that looks like. But yeah, when the bride starts studying more, she comes to Yentl and is like, oh, you told me about, that the bride has a right to refuse her husband, but you never told me about the part where it's written that the bride has a right to demand her husband. And then Yentl's like, oh, you've been studying, like, and so this bride starts kind of like trying to demand, and it, that's when things start getting, maybe, I don't know if it really gets tense, but it seems like it could potentially get more tense at that point in that couple's relationship. And then Yentl kind of goes over to Avigdor and is like, because it starts getting to be a lot of pressure. Because how long are you going to go, in a marriage? Like, this lady thinks she's married to a man. Like, we all know this can't go on forever, but Avigdor doesn't know that Ancel's actually Yentl. Avigdor does not know this until, one night Yentl comes over and just reveals, I'm a woman, I'm in love with you. They kind of have this argument. And then Avigdor's like, I didn't understand why I felt this way about you. And they're kind of like, but also kind of like, what have you done? Like, and like, well, we had the wedding, but we didn't consummate the marriage. But it's also like, they're like, I guess Yentl's like, you gotta kind of report this to the rabbis or something. And they're trying to find like a way around it. And the movie kind of just leaves you there, for the most part, that Avigdor is kind of like very fond of Yentl, even though like pissed off about the situation. And yeah, Avigdor is, having concerns. But I don't know. Does Avigdor go back to that wife? Does that family's reputation get ruined? Because they did have like a whole wedding ceremony. But the wedding was never consummated. And then, who knows what this lady, what this bride, I don't know who married her. Because she couldn't stay married to Yentl, and now that Avigdor and Yentl are kind of like in love, and I guess, I don't know, because I guess Avigdor technically can't marry his love of his life either, that woman who Yentl ended up having the wedding ceremony with. Avigdor can't really go back and marry her because the family won't allow it. Because of his brother ending his life and having that in the family history, a history of depression in the family. So that's kind of how the movie goes. So what I'm gonna do, this is 89 minutes. Sorry I talked so long. I did start with like 30 minutes worth of fluff. But up to 80, let me see, it's not quite 90 minutes yet. We're like around 89 minutes or so. So around the 89-minute mark. So this episode from about minute 30 to 89, I was actually talking about the movie. I'm going to put that in the description. I'm also going to put at the beginning of the next episodes, and this Yentl's free on YouTube right now, by the way. At the beginning of the next episodes, I'm going to put the email addresses for those specific podcasts, the specific podcast where I'm posting for the part 2. I'm going to say I'll post and say the email address where you can email me if you want if you want the link to the other part 2 from the other podcast. I might put a part 2 on one other podcast or 2 other podcasts, because I've got this other one that I'm like, it might actually fit. It depends on a topic. So I'm going to end this one here. We've got a gender LGBTQ plus one, which will be a part 2, and we've also got I'm going to look into some of these religious texts that they mentioned. I'm going to talk about some of those, as well as maybe the one by Frida Weissel. I have to read it first and then talk about it. But at the beginning of part 2, I'll say how you can email me and message me about it. And then you can kind of get the other links if you want them. If you don't want them, if you don't already know what those podcasts are, then I'm just going to assume you're not interested in those anyways, and then the information won't come to you unless you start searching for it and you find it out there, and you're not ignoring it. Then it'll be there. But yeah, I'm just gonna keep it at that for now, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. I ate lunch. I was kind of wired earlier. I ate lunch right before I started recording, though, and that kind of slowed down my energy a little bit. But I was kind of going strong off of that bulletproof coffee this morning. That helps, though. Bulletproof coffee in a fasted state is, in my opinion, is good for the energy. It's good for the mind. I get a little slowed down. My meals kind of slow me down. It's probably like sugars and blood sugar kind of thing. I don't know. But anyways, I appreciate you guys listening. This is like 90 minutes long of me just rambling on and on. But I like these types of topics. I really like these kind of topics a lot. So I really like the movie, and I'm glad I stayed up late to watch it, because I was just going to go to bed. And I didn't really lose that much sleep. I woke up when I wanted to. Not the early when I wanted to, but when I wanted to. And my energy was pretty decent this morning. I felt pretty rested after I kind of got into the day, so things went well. But yeah, I'll post part 2s, and then once the part 2s are out, you will see them. And you'll be able to request that link if you want the link. If you don't want the link, just just stick to the podcast that you already know. Or you can, if you already know the other podcasts where I'm recording at, you'll have the information there. You'll be able to find it there. So, yeah. Alright, guys. I'm going to cut this one for now, and start working on those part 2s. Thanks so much for listening.